Testing, 1, 2, 3. Everything is set up. Okay, we start with the homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, good morning, everybody. Okay, today is December 8th, 2012. Okay, so today we're starting a new chapter of the Majjhima Nikaya. This is called the Brahmana Vagga. That is, it's a collection of 10 suttas that are involving Brahmins. And the first sutta in this chapter is called the Brahmayu Sutta. This is a discourse involving a Brahmin named Brahmayu. Okay, I see that there are a number of new people here, so if you don't have a copy of the book, the middle-length discourses, if you could be sitting next to a person who has one, then you can share the book. Okay, so the sutta begins when the Buddha has been wandering in the Videhan country. I think that's someplace in the middle of India, with a large community of monks. Yeah, the Videha country, it's actually a bit towards the east. Here, there's a map on page 76, and you could see Videha and Vajji are close together. They're a bit in the east of India. Okay, so on this occasion, there was a Brahmin named Brahmayu who was living in Mithila. And he's described as somebody who was old, aged, advanced in years, and so on, in his 120th year. So if you think you're having problems at the age of 60 or 70, you can go on for another 50, 60 or 50 years. Okay, and he's described as being a master of the 3 Vedas. The Vedas were the sacred texts of the Brahmins, coming down from maybe about 1500 BC, 2000 BC. Especially the Rig Veda was regarded as the most important, and mastered all of the different parts of the Vedas. And then it's said that he was fully versed in natural philosophy, which means, I guess, the ability to understand the workings of nature, and in the marks of a great man. This is the important phrase here. The great man is called the Mahapurisa, and there's a special significance in a great man in relation to the Buddha, as we'll see. Okay, so now the Brahmin Brahmayu heard this report that the recluse Gautama, who is coming from the Sakyan clan, has been wandering in the Videhan country, and a report has been spreading around about this Master Gautama, the ascetic Gautama, that he is a fully enlightened one, fully accomplished, perfect in true knowledge and conduct, and so on. This is the stock description of the Buddha, that he is one who has understood the nature of the world by himself with direct knowledge, and he explains it to the people. He teaches the Dhamma that's good in the beginning, good in the middle, good in the end, with the right meaning and phrasing, and he reveals the spiritual life that is utterly perfect and pure. And so people are saying that it's good to see such arahats, and wherever the Buddha travels, large numbers of people come to see him. But the Brahmin Brahmayu is 120 years old, so it's difficult for him to travel a distance to see the Buddha. But he has a younger student whose name is Uttara, who is also a master of the three Vedas. And so Brahmayu tells his student Uttara that somebody has been traveling, this famous teacher has been traveling around in our country, and he is reputed to be fully enlightened. But, the Brahmins don't accept these reports just on trust, on faith, but they want to confirm for themselves that the report is true. And so he wants to send his pupil Uttara to, check out the Buddha, find out whether he really measures up to the reputation that's spreading about him. And so he says, we will find out about this Master Gautama through you. Okay, but now the student Uttara inquires, he says, how shall I find out whether the report about this Master Gautama is true or not? How should I find out whether he's really everything he's built up to be, really a fully enlightened Buddha? Okay, and now the Brahmin Brahmayu tells him, this is where the 32 marks come in. He says that in our sacred scriptures, the 32 marks of a great man have been transmitted. And if somebody is endowed with these 32 marks, there are only two possible destinies for him. If he continues to live the household life, then he becomes what is called a Chakravarti Raja. This means a wheel-turning monarch. And he is described as a righteous king who will rule over the world, ruling over the 4 quarters, the 4 great continents, according to ancient Indian belief. He'll rule over the 4 continents. Jambudvipa, that's the continent of India. To the north is Uttarakuru, to the east is Puba Videha, and to the west is... Anybody remember the Western country? Okay, there's a continent to the west. So he'll rule over those 4 continents. Puba Paranta. He'll rule over them not by force, not by conquest, but by righteousness. And then he'll have, they're called 7 treasures of the wheel-turning monarch. He has, the first is the wheel treasure. This is a kind of mystical wheel that appears to him when he's bound to become a wheel-turning monarch, then that wheel appears to him, and then he has to earn the right to the throne by practicing righteousness. When he does that, the wheel will stay with him, but if he violates the principles of righteousness, the wheel disappears, and then he will lose his kingdom. Okay, so there's the wheel treasure, the elephant treasure. This is the kind of very powerful, large elephant. Or horse treasure. This is a very swift horse which is actually able to ride through the sky. There is a jewel treasure, very precious jewel, which is a symbol of his rule. The woman treasure, of course, he has to have a very beautiful wife. There is the steward treasure, who takes care of all of his affairs of state for him. The steward treasure is the one who guards all the wealth of the kingdom and knows where to find more wealth, more gold, more jewels. And then there's the counselor treasure, that is like the prime minister who gives him all the necessary advice on policies of state. Then it's said that he has 1,000 sons who are brave and heroic and crush the armies of others, even though the king is supposed to rule by righteousness, not by violence. Okay, but then it said that he rules without a rod, without a weapon, by means of Dhamma, by means of righteousness. This doesn't mean that he knows all of the Buddha's teaching, but basically he teaches everybody how to observe the 5 precepts, how to observe the 10 ways of good action, to practice generosity, to everybody should relate to everybody else by loving kindness. And so in this way, he rules by Dhamma. Okay, that is if the person with the 32 marks, if he decides to live the household life. But if he leaves the household life and goes into homelessness, then he becomes a fully enlightened Buddha. And so Brahmayu is telling his pupil Uttara, in effect, he's saying to him, you should check out this ascetic Gautama, look at him and see whether he has the 32 marks. If he has those 32 marks, then we can be confident that he's a fully enlightened Buddha. Okay, so now the pupil Uttara accepts the advice of his teacher, and he goes traveling to the country, to the Videhan country. He finds out where the Buddha is. Then he exchanges greetings with the Buddha, has a conversation with him, and then, he starts literally checking him out to look over the body to see whether he has these 32 marks. And it's said that he saw more or less the 32 marks of the great man on the Buddha's body, except for 2. There are 2 marks that were not immediately perceptible. So what are these 2 marks? Okay, one of them is that the male organ is enclosed in a sheath. He can't go to the Buddha and say, Bhante, could you please lift up lift up your robe? And then also he had another doubt about, or he couldn't observe the length of the Buddha's tongue. And now the Buddha has the ability to read the minds of others. And so the Buddha knew what the student Uttara was thinking. And he knew that Uttara was uncertain and a bit doubtful about 2 of the marks of the great man. And so now the Buddha is going to help him. And so it's said that now the Blessed One worked such a feat of supernormal power that the Brahmin student Uttara saw that the Blessed One's male organ was enclosed in a sheath. So in this respect, the Buddha helped him affirm 31 marks. And then the Buddha stuck out his tongue full length and used the tongue to cover both nostrils like this and to touch both ear holes like wait, I'm not a Buddha. Okay, so then the Brahmin student Uttara was now certain that the recluse Gautama had the 32 marks of a great man. But still Uttara wanted to check out the Buddha further by observing his behavior. Even though it's maybe he was thinking, even though it's come down in our texts that one who has these 32 marks becomes either a wheel-turning monarch or a Buddha, but of course this is a little bit heretical for Uttara to be thinking this, but maybe he did think, maybe our texts are wrong. Maybe they say that 32 marks and he comes down, and if he's a homeless one, he must be a Buddha. But what if he gets confused about things? What if he's sloppy in his behavior? What if when he's answered questions, he can't answer properly? What if he puts his robe down someplace, then he forgets where he put it, then he has to ask one of the monks to find it for him? If things like that would show that, even though he's reputed to be a Buddha, but he's a bit off track. Okay, so it's said that Uttara now follows the Blessed One for 7 months like a shadow, never leaving him. Then at the end of the 7 months, following the Buddha in the Vedehan country, he returns to his master in Mithila. And then when he arrives, he pays homage to the Buddha, he pays homage to the Brahmin, Brahmayu, and the Brahmin asks him, his teacher asks him, well, is the report true about Master Gautama? Does he really measure up to the description of him as a fully enlightened one? Then Uttara replies, the report that has been spread about Master Gautama is indeed true, not otherwise, and he possesses the 32 marks of a great man. And now we're going to have the enumeration of the 32 marks. And I have to say that some of these will seem a bit strange. If we read the description, the way that's set down here, I don't want to sound disrespectful, but it will sound a little bit like the Buddha maybe descended from another planet. Some of them are not typically characteristic of another human being. But the way I imagine it is that these marks, when we see them in the Buddha statues, sometimes they're very prominent, very pronounced. But I would suspect that they were actually very subtle and that one would have to look very carefully to notice them. And that over time in Buddhist iconography, in statues and paintings, they become more and more exaggerated. So that sometimes you could see even in some of the Thai statues or the Burmese statues, the usma, that's that prominent protuberance on the head, it comes up almost like like he's wearing a crown. Okay, so let's go over, and then I should mention that there is a sutta in the Digha Nikaya, it's called the Lakkhana Sutta. This is Sutta number 30 in the Digha Nikaya, which describes the significance of these 32 marks. And it explains these 32 marks by way of the behavior of the Buddha in previous lives, in his past existences. And so each of these 32 marks is considered to be a kind of manifestation in physical form of the merits and virtues that the Buddha accumulated by repeatedly exercising certain types of virtuous conduct. And I took notes yesterday on several of these. To go through all of them would take a lot of time, and they get to overlap to some extent. But it'll be interesting just to note a few of them. And if you want to learn the significance of all of them, then you can read that sutta on your own. Okay, so it said, the first is that the Master Gotama sets his foot down squarely. So this is a mark of a great man that he has. And this is described as a level tread. So most of us, when we put our foot down, usually I think most people put the heel down a little bit first, followed by the sole. Maybe some people put the sole of the foot down, followed by the heel. But the Buddha always walks with a level tread. And this is said to be the result of undertaking in his past lives, undertaking mighty deeds for good purposes and for practicing good conduct of body, speech, and mind. I guess the idea is that good conduct of body, speech, and mind can be described as level conduct or even conduct, balanced conduct. And so for that reason, the Buddha has a level tread when he walks. The second mark is that on the soles of his feet, there are wheels with 1,000 spokes and ribs and hubs, all complete. I think it's 1,000 spokes, not 1,000 hubs, because a wheel will have only one hub. So it's 1,000 spokes, and with the ribs and hub complete. And this is supposed to be the fruit or the result of, in his past lives, it's said that he dispelled for many beings, he dispelled fear and terror and provided protection and shelter. Okay, the third mark, he has projecting heels. The fourth, he has long fingers and toes. And the next, his hands and feet are soft and tender. These three marks are said to be the result of abstaining from the destruction of life in previous existences. Okay, the next one is that, this is one that seems a little strange. He has netted hands and feet. It seems that there is some kind of, I don't know, like a net-like structure between the fingers and the toes. And this is supposed to be the result in previous lives of actually these two, 5 and 6, having soft and tender hands and feet and having netted hands and feet. Those are the result of, in previous lives, practicing the 4 Sanghahavatu, the 4 means of benefiting others, or the 4 means of establishing wholesome relationships with others. And what are those four means? It's practicing giving or generosity, pleasant speech, beneficial conduct to others, and then treating others equally. Treating others the way one treats oneself, or treating others the way you would have others treat yourself. So by practicing these four means of benevolence, one acquires soft and tender hands and feet and netted hands and feet. Okay, then his legs, his feet are arched, and he has legs like an antelope. It said that his feet are arched because he taught in past lives, he taught people about their welfare, and his legs are like an antelope because, that means very thin legs, I guess, with the graceful, probably gracefully shaped legs. Because in past lives he was he taught people different types of arts and crafts. Okay, then when he stands without stooping, the palms of both his hands can touch and rub against his knees. I guess it's somewhat like this. Cheating. Okay, his male organ is enclosed in a sheath. Some of these I didn't take notes on. He is the color of gold. His skin has a golden sheen. This is said to be a result of being patient and without anger in past lives. Okay, then he has very, very fine skin, very, very fine complexion, so that dust and dirt do not stick on his body. So it's said, but in a number of suttas you read that the Buddha speaks about going to the river to bathe. So I don't know how to reconcile those. Okay, his body hairs grow singly. Each body hair, it's in its own hair pore. We'll go through some of these quickly. The tips of his body hairs turn upwards, and the body hairs are bluish black, curled to the right. He has straight limbs, 7 convexities or protuberances on the hands, the feet, the shoulders, and the chest. He has the torso of a lion. The furrow between his shoulders is filled in. He has the span of a banyan tree, so that the span of his arms equals the height of his body, and the height of the body equals the span of his arms. His neck and his shoulders are even. It's said his taste is supremely acute. Now, I don't know how Uttara would be able to observe this. But I don't have the answer to these questions. He has the jaw like a lion. He has 40 teeth, even teeth. Teeth are without gaps. His teeth are quite white. He has a large tongue. He has a divine voice, like the call of the Karavika bird. He has deep blue eyes. He has the eyelashes of an ox. Again, it's a little puzzling, but it's very puzzling to me, since I've never observed the eyelashes of an ox. He has hair growing in the space between his eyebrows. This is supposed to be kind of tuft of white hair between the eyebrows. We often see this in the Buddha statues. It's illustrated by a kind of dot between the eyebrows. And then it's said here that his head is shaped like a turban, And this accounts for that protuberance on the head. It's a little sort of rise. I would imagine it was just like a very light rise at the top of the head. Though in the Buddha's art it gets shown very prominently. Okay, so now Uttara sums up and says, Master Gotama is endowed with these 32 marks of a great man. And now Uttara is going to go further and describe the behavior of the Buddha to show how in all his different types of behavior, he always shows, we call it poise, serenity, self-possession, or kind of dignity in action, always being mindful, self-possessed, careful, considerate of others, courteous to others. Okay, so he starts by describing his way of walking. I'll just skim over these, because if I read them it will take a long time. Let's just see if there are any here that are prominent. Okay, so maybe these can serve actually as a good model for behavior. Not that you should try to imitate the Buddha in all respects, but some of these show, how to act in one's day-to-day life. So the Buddha, when he starts walking, he always puts out the right foot first. And he doesn't put the foot out too far or too close. He walks neither too quickly nor too slowly. And he doesn't knock the knees together when he walks or knock the ankles together. And then when he walks, it's only the lower part of the body that oscillates, but he keeps the upper body straight. And this is interesting. When the Buddha wants to look to the side, he always turns the whole body. And when he wants to look at something behind him, again he turns the whole body around. This is described in the text as the elephant look. When we want to look to the side, we look like this, or sometimes we even turn around to look like this. But the Buddha always maintains this kind of self-possession and dignity. So if there's somebody, say, calling him from the side, then he doesn't look like this, but he'll turn like that. If somebody is calling him from behind, or if he wants to see something behind him, again, he'll just turn the whole body around and look this way. And I said that when he walks, he looks just a plow yoke's length ahead of him. That would be, I guess, about 3 yards, 3 to 5 yards. But beyond that, he's aware of everything that's going on beyond his immediate field of vision. Then when he's approaching a seat, in paragraph 11, when he's turning around to seat his body, he doesn't turn around too far from the seat so that he'll miss the seat, or he doesn't get up so close that he'll sort of be knocking up against the seat, but just the proper distance. And he doesn't lean on the seat with his hand, and he doesn't throw his body onto the seat. The way people, when they get home after a hard day's work, you just find your favorite armchair and you just say, wow, what a relief. You just, I do that too sometimes. But as I read this, I learn some new lessons. But you just sit down mindfully. Okay, when he's sitting indoors, he doesn't fidget with his hands or with his feet. He doesn't cross his knees. He doesn't cross the ankles. And then he doesn't shiver and tremble He doesn't show any signs. He doesn't get nervous when he's indoors. Okay, now this is when he's receiving, when a meal is about to be offered. See, when the monks come into a house to receive a meal, they bring their alms bowl, and the first thing to be done is that the people who are offering the meal will offer the monks, they'll pour water into their bowl, so that the monks will then use their hand to wipe the bowl, and then somebody else will come along with, it's like a kind of bucket, and then they pour the water that was used to wash the bowl, they pour that into the bucket. So this is how the Buddha, when he receives the water for the bowl, he does not raise the bowl up too high or keep the bowl too low or tip it forwards or backwards, but he just keeps it at the right height so that the person who's offering the water could offer it easily without any trouble. Then he receives neither too little water nor too much. He'll let the person pour the water into the bowl when it's the right amount. He'll probably put his hand over to show that he has enough. Then you use the hand to wash the bowl, but when the Buddha does this, you know, some of especially newly ordained monks and novices, they like to rub the hand around quickly to make a splashing noise, and then they laugh with one another, ha 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 ha. But then the elder monk will start scolding them, you shouldn't do it that way, that's not proper. But the Buddha, when he's washing the bowl, he doesn't make a splashing noise, and he doesn't turn the bowl around, but he keeps it steady and just slowly turns his hand around. Okay, and then when he's finishes washing the bowl, then he pours the water at the right distance to from the bucket that's coming around to receive the water. Okay, similarly now, the washing of the bowl is finished. Now he's receiving first. People, usually they offer the rice first. So in the same way, he receives the rice without putting the bowl up too high, like he's really eager to get the rice, or keeping it too low so that the person has to bend all the ways down to put it in, but he keeps it at the right height. And then he takes exactly the right amount of rice, not too much, not too little. He adds the sauces or the other dishes in the right proportion. Then when you see in India, also in Sri Lanka, probably in Bangladesh as well, even today, most people, they eat with the hands, the rice and the curries with the hands, not with a spoon or with chopsticks, but with the hands. So what you do is you take some of the curry, the prepared dishes, and mix it together with the rice. You roll it into a ball, and then you put the ball in the mouth. And so the Buddha, when he's making, this is called a pinda, a ball of food. So that's why we call the alms food pindapata. It's the balls of food that are dropped into the alms bowl. So when the Buddha is making the ball of food, he puts the sauces or the other dishes in right proportion to the rice. Okay, and then it said that he turns the mouthful over 2 or 3 times and then swallows it. Though I've gotten advice from like health specialists, they always say you should chew many times. So he chews just 2 or 3 times in the mouth and then swallows it. But when he swallows, all the rice kernels have been chewed, and no rice kernel remains in his mouth. So he finishes swallowing one bowl of food. Only then does he take the next bowl of food. Not like the way many people eat very hastily, without even fully chewing one biteful. Already they're lifting up the next biteful. Then he takes his food, experiencing the taste, but not experiencing greed for the taste. And then the food that he takes has 8 factors. This is actually the reflection that we use, that the monks use when taking the food, that one eats not for the sake of amusement, that's for fun, for intoxication, to make the body beautiful and attractive, but only for the health and continuation of the body, for ending discomfort, and for supporting the spiritual life. Okay, then when the Buddha has finished eating, then when one finishes eating, then people will come around with more water for washing the bowl. So one will hold out the bowl. Often if there's some food left over, then somebody will come around with a tray, and then one puts the leftover, a little bit of leftover food into the tray, and then that food will be offered to, if people have dogs or cats, to the animals, or just put outside for the animals from the woods to eat it. But one receives, after that, then one receives the water for washing the bowl. And so the Buddha receives the water in the same way, with the bowl not too high, not too low, not bent forwards or backwards, taking not too much water, not too little water, washing the bowl without a splashing sound, and so on. And then washing the bowl, while one washing the bowl, at the same time one is washing the hands. So nowadays people often, they put out next to each monk, there'll be like a little dish with a little piece of soap on it.